Hello and welcome to today's video. Today is a live stream cast all about wedding consultations. Last week, we talked all about the wedding boom that is happening here in the US. And I thought it would be appropriate to now talk about actually booking more of those weddings in a more practical sense. And so I thought this could be helpful and a good conversation to have since I know so many of my students right now that I'm working with as a business coach one-on-one and in some of my digital programs have been talking about the meetings, the consultation, the process of actually taking that inquiry and bringing them all the way into booked client status. So if you are excited about this topic today, give me a thumbs up, jump into the comment section or the live chat and let me know where you're watching from. I'm super excited to dive in. Before I do that, though, I want to let you guys know that everything that I'm sharing today is going to just be a small excerpt from a free guide that I have for you guys that's available in the description below. So if you want to dive into this a little bit more, unpack this, and get the worksheet that I use when I go through wedding consults with couples to just fill in their details and make sure I guide the meeting with intention and lead them closer to the sale, you can get that down below and it's free. So I hope that that's helpful for you guys. Okay, I am going to dive right in. So let's talk about the wedding consultation. And I think before we jump into what I have broken down into basically the three sections of a successful client consultation and what you may need to adapt or change in your process depending on what you're currently doing with your client consultations. I just want to preface this by talking a little bit about why we do a consultation, why this is so important, and really what actually happens before the consultation even happens that you also need to be aware of if you're feeling like you're having a hard time converting your client consultations or that you're having a hard time maybe even getting clients on to a consultation, right? So once again, I'm not seeing comments here, so I'm going to pull up my second monitor. So give me just 1 second here. That way I'll be able to see your questions and comments as we come through and we talk. Okay, so let's first just talk about why we have consultations to begin with. So before we dive in to the meat of this talk, let's talk about that. So I think that the wedding consultation, it becomes this like, we almost like Frankenstein this concept a little bit and make it really scary. And I think so oftentimes photographers think that they need to be really pushy salespeople and have like these special tactics in order to convert these meetings, when really I think that there are just a few key things that you can be doing in these meetings that are going to make you exponentially more likely to be booked by the prospective couple. And the reason why we want to make sure that we have consultations with our couples is not just to vet, and make sure that they want to choose us, but we're also choosing them. And we need to make sure that we're connecting with them on the different levels of making sure that we're able to serve them really, really well. And so the wedding consultation, I have the guide here pulled up and I'm saying the wedding consult is the engaged couple's chance to get to know you, your work, and ultimately decide whether or not they want to hire you. But what we need to understand is that a lot happens before we're even on a call with them, right? So much happens. They are already aware that they need a photographer. They're already aware of your business. They are probably pretty aware of what kind of style of work they're drawn to. And hopefully they've seen that in your work. And at this point, they may have even uncovered a few problems or things that they are nervous about, worried about, and want you to come in and fix. So an example of this could be they know that they need beautiful pictures, but they have a huge family, right? And they don't know how someone's going to come in and corral their family. Or maybe one of them is really, really camera shy and they want beautiful pictures, but they're like, hey, my fiance is really camera shy and we're worried about that. Or they could say, we have this budget and we need this many hours. All of those are problems. And those are really important because they're going to come up later as we talk here today about what's important during that meeting and the problems that you're trying to come in and identify so that you can be the solution to that problem. Okay. Cool. I just want to pull this up so that I can actually see your comments since it's not coming up on my desktop. Okay. All right. So then the other thing to remember is that before your meetings with a couple, they've probably gone through quite a process of looking at your brand. And so making sure that by the time they get to you, that you have set yourself up for success in what to expect from the meeting and what to expect from a consultation is really important. Okay, so let's break this down into 3 steps. So the 3 steps of your consultation that we're going to talk about here is like the before. So preparing, picking your location, setting a time, and you preparing as the professional, the during the meeting, and then the after. So first, let's do the before. So before this meeting can occur, obviously, we have to select a time and a place, and even an avenue now when we're in this age where sometimes we're not even meeting in real life, right? We might be doing a lot of Zoom meetings and phone meetings. But what I would suggest that you do is at the very minimum, do a video call meeting, because your goal here in this meeting is to establish the know, like, and trust factor for between you and your client or your potential client. And if they can see your face and if they can hear your voice at the same time, that's going to be exponentially more likely to happen and for them to understand what you're saying, hear your tone, but also to see your expressions. And so what I have found in my business over the past 8 years is that if I can meet with someone in person, my potential chance of converting them is much, much higher, converting them into a paying client and a booked wedding. Okay, super good question from Karina. She asks, do you send your pricing before the meeting? And I don't. I actually don't. So, and this is something that I think is really powerful and is really important when you feel like, as a photographer, so oftentimes people are price shopping you. They're asking for just your full pricing, and they're not having a good conversation with you before they can actually understand that this is not apples to apples. You know, you might be the same price as this other photographer, but your experience and what you're offering could be much, much better, much different, way more hands-on, and include more things. And so sometimes I think that that can get in the way. So before the meeting can happen, I think decide on the best avenue. I encourage you to do in-person meetings as much as you can, but a Zoom meeting is also really great. And you should also be setting up expectations as far as how long these meetings are going to take. So I think you're a little more likely to get someone on a call and into a meeting if they don't think that meeting is going to take half an hour or an hour. So a lot of times in my initial email, I'll say, hey, do you guys have 15 minutes to just hop on the phone or a Zoom call this week? And I give a very specific time. And then I say, so that I can share my collections with you in detail. They know this is going to be a brief call. We're just going to get to know each other. Now, I'm not going to cap the time of that call. If they do want to actually stay on this call much, much longer, they can, and sometimes my meetings do go much longer. But I think that by bringing down the commitment level of your meetings and making them shorter and asking clients, say, hey, do you have 10 minutes to hop on a call? Here's my Zoom link. That's going to be a much more easy yes than like, hey, let's have this full consultation workup, right? So that's a great question, Karina. I'm going to get into that in just one second during the actual meeting portion. And then the only other thing, let me see. This screen is so small. The other thing that I hear from photographers sometimes is that because they don't have a studio space or their own meeting space, that they are hesitant to meet with couples in real life, and that sometimes they think it looks unprofessional. And so what I will tell you is that I have never had a studio space or professional photography like office space or shared workspace in my career. I've done the majority of my meetings at Starbucks or just smaller local shops. And so because of that, I just want to let you know that if you don't have a space, do still meet with your clients in person because it's still really powerful. And I don't think that couples expect their photographer to, only they could be professional if they have a studio space. I don't think those two things go together. And people know that a lot of times when you're running a small business that you don't have a studio space, and that's okay. Okay, so you've chosen your time. You've given them an expectation of how long that meeting is going to take. Excuse me. and you've chosen your location or your avenue of how you're going to be doing that. And so now during the meeting, it's my focus to get to know the couple, really listen to how they describe their wedding day, and take a chance to cover the collections that I mentioned to Karina just a few minutes ago. And so let's talk about the actual meeting, because I feel like this is the part where it gets a little scary. Sometimes you don't know what to ask. You're not sure how much you should talk or share, how much of it should be about pricing. And so I just want to give you a few quick points here. But again, if you want to dive in deep to this, grab the free guide. It is available in the description section below. Okay, so what I do in my initial email to a couple, when they reach out, they say, hey, are you available? We'd love to talk to you. I'm going to let them know that I am available if I am, when I'd like to meet with them. And I do give them a brief like a window outline of like, here's what an average portrait session and a wedding session are costing currently for my clients. So they have an anchored price point. Now, this is the same thing that I do on my website. I'm not going to have full pricing because I want my pricing to be able to change without changing my whole website. I want to be able to do that on the back end inside of Honeybook, which is what I use to manage my clients. But also, I don't want to be price compared to everyone else because I'm a boutique photographer. I am not trying to compete on price. And if you're not trying to compete on price, I would urge you to listen to some of the pricing psychology of this, because your services and your products are more than just the bullet points below what is included in each collection. And so in order for you to best display that, I think that you need to have a consultation. And so sometimes we don't even get to the consultation because we just sent pricing and they said, I have everything I need to know. Whereas on our end, we know they don't have everything they need to know. We need to talk to them and explain what the process of being their wedding photographer actually looks like and what you bring to the table, what is your unique, like your experience, but also your unique perspective and eye and stylistically and what that looks like, right? So we know that this is not apples to apples, but I think that if we just go forward and send a full pricing guide, you're making it extremely difficult for someone to see the differentiation because they've never even had a chance to connect with you and hear your vision for their day. Okay, so Karina says, do you give them an expiration for the pricing sheet in the meeting? Okay, so this is a good question. Like expiration meaning like if they came back in a month, I wouldn't still honor the price, like that kind of thing. So what I do is I will give them that window of like, here is what my average couple is spending. I would love to talk to you. If at that point they still want to talk to me and they want to get full pricing, I will book the meeting with them. And in the meeting and just before the meeting, I will send them my full pricing outline so that they have it and we can go over it in the meeting together. So they know that I'm going to share that in the meeting. It's not a secret, but I do give them the option at the end of the meeting to hold their date for 48 hours. And so that's a really interesting thing that I have implemented into my business. And I've had some of my students successfully implement as well. And basically at the end of the meeting, if I really like this couple, I feel like we did like, this was a good fit. I think that they're going to book with me. A lot of times I will put a date hold and let them know that no one's going to come steal your date. I'm going to hold this date for you as a courtesy until this time so that they know that I'm not going to just turn around and say, oh, the date's gone. So I'm holding it, but not forever. Then I let them know after that point, let's say it's Friday at noon. Okay, I'm going to hold your date as a courtesy so that you guys can think about this, go over the collections, discuss this with your family, talk to other photographers, and let me know if you do decide we're a good fit to work together. And then I give them the next steps. I say, here's how you can book with me. Here's how we can lock in your date, which I do all of that inside of Honeybook. If at that point, I let them know that after that date hold, it's first come, first serve. So they kind of know in a really graceful way, I'm telling them, after this point, I'm not going to let you know if someone comes in and steals your date. And that's just like, I can't logistically keep track of who has not gotten back to me, who's basically ghosted me, and do I need to circle back and let them know that this new bride came in and wants this date? I'm just going to let them know I'm only holding it for this long. After that point, the date is completely open, and there's no courtesy notice. And that's that's also going to serve as a gentle nudge for them to make a decision, yes or no, by a certain time. And I think sometimes when presented with an option, if there are too many options, we cannot make a decision. But we can also we can also decide not to decide on something when there's no reason to decide immediately. So you'll see this oftentimes when websites have a sale. They say, this is the countdown timer at the top is telling you when that sale is going to be over, or they're going to tell you when you have free shipping is going to end at this time. So you basically have to decide. It's not forcing you to make a decision to buy anything from them. You can just X out of the window and say, no, thanks, I'm good. I don't need to buy new shoes today. But if you did want those shoes and you did want free shipping, you're probably going to say, I might as well just make this decision now, go ahead and buy it while I can get that. And so that just helps them to decide yes or no. So I do give them a date hold. And as far as sending the pricing, I don't have like an expiration for how long that pricing is good for. It is only for the year of the wedding that they're asking for. So let's say it's a 2022 wedding. I'm going to send 2022 pricing. There's nothing to say that like if they came back in 6 months and your pricing had changed, absolutely you can send them the updated pricing. I don't think you're stuck with that old pricing, especially if it has been that long. But I do expire my proposals. So let's say that we meet, they say, yes, we love the 8-hour collection. I'm on my end inside of Honeybook. I put together a proposal and I send it their way. That proposal has a 2-week expiration date so that they can't come back in 6 months and sign that contract, pay the retainer. And then I'm sitting there like, well, I don't charge those prices anymore, right? So you can put an expiration on proposals, which I strongly recommend that you do. Okay. Elizabeth says, I may have missed this. How do you get people to actually hop on a call? They always say in their form that they want to chat and then they ghost me. So Elizabeth, we talked a little bit about how I don't send full pricing up front. And I think this is a way that clients can get all the information they think they need without talking to you. And I think that pricing is like this much of the equation, and we have all this other information about what it would be like to work with you, the experience that you offer, any of the other intangibles, like if you're giving them timeline help, maybe talking about your printed products and albums, that's not one size fits all. And so encouraging them to get on the call really also comes down to that initial email and a very strategic follow-up sequence. And so, Elizabeth, everything that we're talking about here today is covered in the guide below. I have a whole free guide on your wedding consultations, including a little list of like a little worksheet that you can actually print out and use for your consultations to help you gather good information. The other thing that I will say that we mentioned briefly is that I think we need to make the consultation a very low commitment situation. And so people are really busy. They just are. They're probably reaching out to like 5 photographers. They've sent a couple DMs on Instagram. They filled out your contact form. They are genuinely interested. But I have 2 tips for you. Number 1, make the meeting a easy yes by making it very brief and giving them a link that they can click to get on your calendar. You can do this through Honeybook. It's included in the Honeybook software. They have scheduling blocks. So you can do time blocks for your portrait sessions. You can do time blocks for your consultations. And you can do time blocks for anything. And I do this for my coaching clients. That's where they book their one-on-one sessions with me. I do this for all kinds of things in my business. But I would encourage you to have 15-minute time blocks. And on the back end, you can buffer and add more time. But what they're seeing is a 15-minute increment. And so if they see that this is just a quick 15-minute call and that they can get on Zoom with you, and you could just call it like, go through the pricing options with me call, and it's 15 minutes. So they know they're going to get the complete pricing by talking to you. But then, of course, you and I know that when they get on that call with you and they see you and they connect with you and they share their story with you and you guide them through as the expert that you are, they're going to sense that there's more than just pricing in this equation. And it's a very emotional decision because it's wedding photography after all. And so I think that's going to give you a unique advantage. The other tip that I would give you for actually getting people to get on that call and stop ghosting you is to pattern interrupt and do something different. No one is willing to respond in a different way. I feel like what I hear so often is, I can't get brides to respond. I'm getting ghosted. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. First thing you need to do is look at your emails and look at your follow-up. Make sure that that's dialed in, because if it's not and you blend in, or people don't open it, or it gives them the wrong information, they're going to ghost you. You can get all of my emails. There's 35 plus wedding emails, including all of my workflows in the back end of my business, available below. It's called Hobby to Pro Toolkit, if you're interested. But if you are willing to do something that not everybody is going to do, like send a video response or text them or actually call them and respond to them, you're going to stand out. And one way that I like to do this is through the app called Bonjoro. And Bonjoro is free, and you can basically, in real time, as soon as you get an inquiry, you can set it up to auto notify you, like, hey, Sam inquired about wedding photography. Are you available? I can pull out my phone, open up the camera, and say, hey, Sam, I just got your inquiry. I'm just here with my kids this afternoon. I'm not by my computer, but I'm going to send you some information this afternoon. So excited to hear about yours and like Daniel's wedding, right? No one else is doing that. That's just a fact. Like, I don't know any other photographers that are willing to get on a video call and then email that immediately, and it formats it into the email and it says, hey, Sam, I have a video for you. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they click it and it says like, hey, Sam, I just got your inquiry. You've stood out, right? Like, that's just good business, good marketing. So really, if you're feeling like nobody's emailing me back, you need to look at those emails. But also, if nobody's getting on those calls, the call isn't juicy enough. There's not a good enough reason for them to get on the call. It could be that they already have all the pricing. They feel like they have everything that they need. So we need to sit there and say, what am I doing? Like, I like to just get a whiteboard out and whiteboard and say, what am I doing? Why is it not working? And also we know it's not working, right? If you're sitting there and you're like, it's not working, my meetings aren't working, write out what you're currently doing in your meetings, download my guide, compare them, and start trying something new. It's pretty, like, most of the time it's something that we're doing, right? And it's not that we're going to be able to avoid being ghosted always, but this is going to tremendously turn around the amount of times that you would hear back from somebody. At least they would say, here's where we decided to go with another photographer. And that's fair, right? We would like to know that. Okay. Vienna says, such amazing points about easing into pricing and meetings, definitely making some changes going forward. I am super excited to hear that. I think it's very powerful. I think that pricing doesn't need to be a secret, but we also need to be strategic about how we hand that out, because your pricing is going to change and you don't want your pricing to just be like floating around everywhere all the time. And your pricing is not everything. We know that there's so much more that goes into our business than just the prices we have chosen. And we want to be seen as the person, the service provider that we are, and not just a bottom line price point, because it's not easily comparable to other people's services. Okay, so the meeting is underway. You've chosen the time and place. You've made it an easy yes. I'm going to immediately before that meeting happens, I'm going to go ahead and send them my pricing so that they have it, but we're already having that meeting. So I'm talking like minutes before I walk into the coffee shop or before we hop on a Zoom call, because I want them to have it. And it's not a secret. I want them to have that pricing, but I also want to make sure that we meet face to face and we see if there's a potential connection there. So I go into the meeting and I follow basically the outline that's inside of the guide that I provide for you guys in the description section. Okay, Stephanie said, I'm sorry I missed it. What was that software called? Oh, Bonjoro. Yeah, Bonjoro. It's like a little orange app, I think. I have it on my phone and I hook it up with a program called Zapier that allows me to get a notification when somebody meets a certain criteria. Zapier is amazing, guys. It's like, it connects all the things. It's a little bit techie, but it's definitely worth it. Okay, so we're in the meeting. What else am I going to do? I'm going to follow the meeting outline that is inside of the free guide that's available to you. So I'm going to ask those questions. But I want to highlight just two of the questions that I think are going to be very revealing to make the meetings more fun, more interesting, and actually make you memorable. Because the thing that we have to remember here is that, couples probably are going to have many wedding consultations. If not just with other photographers, they're also having consultations with caterers and florists and, a videographer maybe, and planners. And it's like, it's so much, and it all starts to sound exactly the same. And so when it comes to photography, my goal is really trying to hear what's important to them so that I can potentially be the solution for them. So, on first and foremost, so I know if I'm a good fit for them. Because if I'm not, I will readily admit it and I will, say, hey, I actually have friends that are better at what you're talking about. And I'm going to make that referral because I think that's going to come back to me. And that's its own thing with networking. But I also want to make sure that I uncover what they truly care most about in their photography, and not just make that assumption. So I have two questions here that I like to ask. I say, what images do you most look forward to having on your 10-year anniversary? That's going to give me a lot of information as to what part of the wedding day matters to them, who in their wedding matters to them. Is this friends? Is it family? Is it grandparents? What pictures? And the answers are going to vary quite a bit. You hold on to this information, you let them talk. So the first 70% of the meeting, and that could just be 7 minutes, right? Like we're talking about a 10-minute meeting here. The first 7 minutes is a lot of them talking. I'm trying to get to know them. I want to hear what they've planned, where they're at in their process. That's going to give me a really good idea if they're ready to commit to a contract or not. They might be very, very early in their experience of planning their wedding, and that's okay. So giving some context to where they're at in their planning is great. But I also want to know what's their most important thing, or what they think is their most important thing, because that's all that matters, right? Once I have that, I'm looking for ways to reincorporate it back into our conversation. Let's assume that having their grandparents there is the most important thing, and they want pictures with their grandparents because they know in their 10-year anniversary, those grandparents may not still be around. And so they've told me that, and I'm remembering that. The next question I'm going to ask them is, what part of the wedding day are you most looking forward to experiencing? And so, instead of saying like, why do you like my photography? What kind of, style are you drawn to? What are your wedding colors? I might ask those questions, but I want to make sure that I'm not asking all the like really standard boilerplate stuff, and I'm asking something a little more interesting, because I also want them to, in the stress of planning their wedding, to think about the part that they're doing it all for. And so if they say, I just can't wait to be on the dance floor with my friends and like have all my closest friends and family in the same place for the first time and maybe even the last, all at once, and that's their answer, that's giving you a totally different vibe than somebody who says, I can't wait to share my vows, or I can't wait for the first look, right? And so it's going to reveal to you what's important to them, because then you know what part to emphasize when you're going over your collections or when you're sharing your albums, which, by the way, I think that you should bring tangible goods to your meetings if you're trying to book higher end clients. Even if designing wedding albums is not a big part of your business, I think they're an incredibly powerful marketing tool. One reason that I like having tangible goods is that it gives you something to like do. Sometimes these meetings can just be a little awkward, and these, couples are like, I don't know what to ask you. Like, you're the professional, you tell me. And I've even had people say like, well, I don't have any questions, but what should I ask you? And that's a perfect opportunity for you right now to think, what do I wish my couples would ask me? Because they don't know that it's important until it's too late. They don't know until they've invested, or maybe had the pictures they don't like, or the day went in a way they didn't like. So really be thinking about that, because I can't tell you how many times I've had people say like, well, those are all the questions I have, but did I miss anything? Should I ask you something different? And then you might be like, well, actually, yes, I have these things that I see as, commonly overlooked questions. And the first, and you can kind of lead in, it's going to give you an opportunity to be the expert, really, which is what you want ultimately, is to be seen as, a relatable expert who's incredible at their craft, but is going to make them feel comfortable and amazing and get amazing work. Okay, so I'm scrolling through the guide, and we're here at the key takeaways. Okay, key takeaways are to draw out their worries, their stresses, and their concerns, because these are going to help you position yourself and your photography as the solution. This is business and marketing 101 that I think sometimes the creative industry can forget about. We get so caught up in the most perfect PDFs of our pricing, making sure the pricing is profitable, and that's wonderful. Like, that's all important. But You have to put yourself in the shoes of your couple. They're the client, they're the consumer. And in that moment, they do have fears and worries and concerns. And when I've taught this in the past, I've heard people say, yeah, but it's a wedding. Like, it's not a problem. But there's always a fear or worry or a concern in the minds of both parties of that couple getting married. And they're likely very different concerns, right? And so it's our job to uncover them, to address them, and to be the solution for them, so that they're paying you not just for incredible work, but for an ease of that worry, or that concern or that fear, right? So, the fear is, I'm not going to look good in front of the camera because I'm not comfortable in front of the camera. You have to become the solution and explain how none of these people in any of these albums are professional models, but here's why we do the engagement session. Here's what I am able to produce. And trust me, you haven't been in front of my camera yet, and I will make you look amazing. That kind of thing, right? You're addressing their worries and becoming the solution. Okay, so the wrap up of the meeting is important because I think it can be an awkward point where they don't have any more questions. You may have covered your pricing. They've looked through the albums and you're like, okay, I hope you book me, and then you leave, or you might hang up, right? And so I think that the close of the meeting is a critical point in giving them direction for what to do next. It's extremely important. So in the close of the meeting, I wrap up in 3 ways. I let them know I can hold their date for 48 hours, but I don't do this if I don't think I'm a good fit for them, because why would I do that? I don't do that. It gives them urgency, it gives them a deadline, and it gives them a time in which they have to make a decision. It's not being pushy. I mean, they can say no, and many people have. But for those who do want to make that decision and actually are leaning towards yes, it just gives them a good time in which they know they need to get back to me with their desired package and when we can get that locked in. I will also let them know how they can book with me. So give them next steps, explain, everything that you see here. These are the prices. Here's what it would look like if we decided to work together. And I think that's really important to say. You might think it's implied that they just have to tell you, hey, I want you to be my wedding photographer. But unless you say, hey, if you choose to work with me and I would love to work with you, here's the next steps. And then you'd walk them through what that would look like and why they want to do this right now so that they can get that engagement session on the book, so that you can start timeline planning, and so that we can just move forward, right? Okay. Next thing I let them know is that I want to work with them. And I think this is so easily overlooked. I definitely, I don't know about you guys. Let me know. Let me know if you've ever been in a meeting, you were like, this is amazing. You guys are amazing. I love this wedding day. And you're excited, but you never actually said, hey guys, I would be honored to be your wedding photographer. And if you choose to work with me, here's how that would look. And you didn't actually tell them, I want to work with you and I would be so excited to work with you. And when I think I was listening to a talk, this isn't something I came up with myself. I was, reading a book, listening to a talk, something working on my business, sales acumen, I guess. And they were saying that we want to work with people that are excited to work with us, right? And nothing is more sacred than someone's wedding in some ways. I mean, there's some stuff more sacred, but you know what I'm saying? This is a big deal. It is so much money. It's so hyped in their minds that it would be, you just really want someone there that wants to be there. And so making sure that you've expressed fully that you want to be there and that being there would be a complete honor to you is going to matter to some couples. Now, some people might say I don't really care. This is an exchange. You're an artist, whatever. But I think for most of us, as humans and as artists, we would love to work with people that want to work with us and that enjoy us as human beings, and vice versa, right? So when I started saying that, I think that I'm just clearly communicating I would be super stoked to be your photographer. And I think a lot of people want to hear that. I know I do when I build out, let's say I'm planning a party or I'm planning my husband and I's 10-year wedding anniversary. Yes, I want the best talent, but I also want people that want to be there, right? I just think that that's something that's very commonly overlooked. Okay, you've had your meeting. You've told them how to book with you. You've given them the date hold. You've told them that you want to work with them, and then how they can make those next steps. Now, inside the guide, I have a whole section on a leave behind, and that is in there if you want to read more about this. But just because time is short today, I'm not going to get into all of that. But the third section here is the after the meeting portion. This is your follow-up and the booking. And I think that sometimes it's overlooked how important a follow-up is. So if you're not following up with your meetings that you have with your couples, you are absolutely leaving money on the table and missing out on bookings. And so at an absolute minimum, you should be following up as soon as the meeting wraps up, as soon as you get home, as soon as you can safely do that. If you just hop off of a Zoom call, I would send them a summary of what the meeting was about. Obviously, photography, but what you discussed, maybe your pricing yet again, letting them know the next steps, re-outlining the date hold, and then telling them again you'd love to work with them. Let them know that they can reach out to you with questions. But I think that at a minimum, it should be 24 hours, 3 days after, 1 week after. The 3 days could be a good point to say like, hey, today is the end of your date hold. Just a gentle reminder, I'm here for any questions you might have if you'd like to move forward and lock in your date. So your follow-up is really important. I also think that the follow-up is key to actually getting them on the call too. So the follow-up is important when they first reach out and they ask for pricing or they ask for your availability and then they ghost. And one suggestion that I have here for you is if you're having a hard time hearing back from your inquiries, you could send a closing the inquiry email. And this is just literally what it is. It's you saying like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm going to be closing out your inquiry because I haven't heard back from you. But if you're still in need of a photographer, just let me know and I'd be happy to open it back up. This will get a response more than just saying like, hey, did you look at my pricing? Can you get back to me? So sometimes it's giving people a little bit of a nudge. The closing the inquiry email is inside of Hobby to Pro Toolkit, as well as my 35 other wedding emails as well. So for anyone who's interested in those emails and doesn't feel like writing them all themselves. Okay, I'm just looking at your comments here. Okay, so we have a question here. How do you get them to express their concerns? Like, what questions do you ask? I think we sort of covered this. I would ask prompting questions that I include in the guide for you guys, as well as things they're looking forward to. But I mean, asking them like how wedding planning is going, and is it what you expected is a really great open question, because they might say, this is really stressful. I feel like, it's never what anyone expects. A lot of times they say, weddings are expensive. I did not expect that. And so just really getting them to open up about the process of the whole wedding planning process, and then saying, what are you looking forward to most about your wedding day? And, are you looking forward to having your pictures taken, or is that something that's making you cringe a little bit? I would ask that. I would just say, like, how do you guys feel about having your pictures taken? That's going to bring out whatever insecurity is on their mind. But I think it's important to get them talking first, to get to know them, make sure you don't come on too heavy, too fast. Like I said, first 70% of the meeting, I want them to talk, and I'm just going to ask questions and get to know them and hear where they're at in the process. And I really like to keep this like casual and light, because I think at this point, they already have seen my work. They've already seen my website. They've already read my, what are they called? Reviews, testimonials, right? So at this point, it's more of a person-to-person check to see if we get along. And that's a really valid thing. If you have a meeting with someone and you just don't really want to spend a whole day together and you don't feel like you're speaking the same language, it's important. And if somebody has a meeting with me and they come to that conclusion, that's exactly what the meeting is for. I want them to know what it's like to have me follow them around on the biggest day of their lives that they've spent so much money on. I want them to know what that's going to feel like. And so as much as you could be yourself and, be in the mindset of like, I'm your wedding photographer and I'm going to follow you guys around and here's what it's going to look like, the better, because they need to get a good feel for what that would actually look like on their wedding day. Another thing that I do during the meetings that I think positions me as the expert is I look for ways to talk about how my team and I do things differently. And I think you should not be afraid to say, like, this is what we do. And I think this is unique because of this. So explaining why you're better than somebody else or why you're different than somebody else is important because, if I go out and I test drive 3 different cars and the salesman doesn't tell me any of the differences and doesn't explain why this one is better. This one has better pickup. This one has better mileage, and this one has, it's like, then I'm just sitting there like arbitrarily choosing, right? So saying how you're different is really important. And then another thing that I do, little bonus secret, is as they're sharing with me about their day, their venues, what's happening, what they're sharing, just their worries, their fears, their things. I'm going to look for ways that I can give them a win before they've booked with me. So I'm going to give them something that's helpful that will probably influence their timeline, even if they don't book with me. And I just want to be, that's the kind of business owner I would want to be. I want to give them a referral to a florist that I know, even if they don't book with me. I want to give them a tip for how they should orchestrate their timeline. I'm not going to plan their whole timeline, but I might give them something to think about that's a nugget that they're going to say, okay, that was really helpful. If you gave me that, I think we should go with her because she knows what she's talking about and she's going to help us plan the rest of the timeline. So you might be talking about portrait time and they say, yeah, our ceremony's at 3:00. We're a little worried about the sun. That's going to be intense. And I would say, yeah, it is. But here's what I like to do. And I pull out my phone and we say, let's look up sunset time on your wedding day. Do you know what time that is? And both of them are like, no. And I'm like, let's talk about sunset time because they have made decisions for their wedding day, but they can still, we're still a year, 18 months out. And now I'm saying, let's think about this in terms of light and getting the best possible images. And you're already framing yourself as the expert. Yeah, they can just go look up sunset time or take these tips and go book someone else. But 9 times out of 10, if you're coming and they already like your work, they're already sitting down to a meeting with you, this is about sealing the deal. You're thinking of it with more confidence instead of saying like, I have to sell them and they might not book with me. That's probably going to show rather than just saying like, I just need to meet them and make sure that we're a good fit. And then they're probably going to book with me. Totally different mental approach to the meeting that I think is really going to help you tremendously. So give them a win, position yourself as the expert, and get them thinking about things like their timeline in the context of photography. And then a lot of times that will provoke a whole new conversation where they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. That's such a good idea. Do you think we can still get sunset portraits? That would be during this time. And then you can say, yeah, actually, let's carve out 10 minutes and make sure that your DJ knows or your band knows during dinner, we're just going to sneak out for some portraits. They already kind of feel like we have a plan and that's how it's going to go. And they're going to get those pictures. And you're painting a picture for how, even on a crazy wedding day, you're going to get them what they want. And that's why it's important to begin with those worries, fears, trepidations, and then end with solution, solution, solution. All right. Let me know if this is helpful, guys. Let me know if this is like getting your wheels turning at all. Okay, so Sheena says, I drop nuggets all the time. Definitely sunset times. Also tips about scheduling out makeup artists to prevent a late timeline start. So huge. This is wonderful and helpful on so many levels. And it's something that I think brides and grooms really appreciate. If you're going to sit down and you're going to give them like, hey, I do this every weekend. This is what I see. You should tell your makeup artist you need to be ready at this time, even though it's this time, because this is the thing that's going to derail your timeline the most. Just giving them that, they can take that or leave that, right? Like you're not forcing your hand, but just saying, I see this a lot. I'm the expert is so helpful. And I know that this is what couples want to hear. And they're like, oh, thank you. We wouldn't have even known that. And so that's a great point. Thank you for dropping that. Let's see. Dominique says, how do you keep connection with your couples between consultation time and the wedding day? This is a great question. Okay. So in your workflow, you need to have a plan for once you book that couple until the time that you deliver all the deliverables on the wedding day. And this is like a timeline. And inside of Hook and Book Brides, we outline this. And you are going to map out when things are happening. So maybe you send the pre-wedding questionnaire, right? Like you're going to ask them for all the information. You probably have an engagement shoot. Maybe you have a timeline planning day, or just an option for them to get on the phone and plan timeline with you. And then you might see this like huge gap where they book you this year. The wedding's not until next fall. What are we doing between this time, right? That is so crucial that you really be thinking about that now and be crafting a plan for how you're going to keep that connection. And also, while you're keeping that connection, you're giving them education so that you get the best possible images. So a good example of this is just checking in by sending them maybe like a blog post that's like, here's how to get the best possible, 5 ways to get better images on your wedding day, like things that you need to plan as far as your timeline, things that you need to plan as far as like having your flowers at this time versus this time, just really thinking through things that they may not be thinking through. I urge you not to reinvent the wheel here. Use the blog posts that you already have. So the content that's already pillars of content in your business that's generating traffic for you, those are great things to repurpose to your brides because they may not have seen all this stuff before. Sending a bridal guide, sending a booking gift, or like a date night box, something in between. This is a great way to touch base. But basically, I think the bottom line is you need to have a workflow in place that you're not actually doing this by hand every single time. And I talk about this extensively in other videos here on my channel. And I do this through Honeybook. So I talk about workflows and automations, just scheduling out emails, ways to check in, ways to ask them, how things are going, and make sure that they know about all the resources that I've created, like a bridal guide or an outfit guide before their engagement session, or even like before their engagement session, sending them like a little guide of like how to get your best pictures, or, hey, you should get hair and makeup done as a wedding trial before your engagement picture. So it's like a double whammy. Being a resource to your couple, I think this is where it really counts, is in this like in between time. So that's a phenomenal question. So map it out, get out a piece of paper, write it down. If you want to just steal all of my emails, my workflows, my everything in the back end of my business, I put all of this into Hobby to Pro toolkit, which is linked down below. But I also talk about this at a higher level here on the YouTube channel. So definitely check that out as well. All right. So tell me all of your questions, guys. If you have any more questions, continue to give them to me. I'm going to wrap this up here in just a couple of minutes. Okay. So we've talked about how to get them on the phone or how to get them into the meeting, the before, during, and after the meeting. And then the actual booking process. I want to talk about this just a little bit because this is important. And I feel like I say this about every point, but they're all kind of these points where in culmination, they will give you a beautiful booking process and make you very confident in your sales process. But if you're missing some of these pieces, this is where it can kind of like the wheel can fly off kind of thing. And your booking process is one of them. And that's the actual signing of the contract, getting the retainer, getting all the information that you need, and making sure that it's in a seamless and automated way. I do this through Honeybook. I swear by Honeybook. I have videos here on my channel all about Honeybook, and there's a trial down below if you want to give it a try, or get 50% off your first year through my affiliate code. If you use my affiliate code, it doesn't cost any more for you, but it does give me a little kickback as a thank you for creating this kind of content for you guys. So I really appreciate it when you guys use my code, and it means a lot. I get DMs of people saying like, I'm ready to sign up. Can I use your code? And that really means a lot to me, guys. Thank you so much. Okay. And then once again, the fill in the blank for how I go about meetings is available in this download as well. Okay. I think that's everything. I mean, it's not everything because there's a lot in the guide, and this is a huge thing to unpack. But I think that the more that we can just be 1% better, 1% better, 1% better at each meeting, the closer you're going to get to your goals and the higher of an actual booking conversion rate that you're going to have. So maybe you add albums and then you make do a leave behind at your next meeting, or maybe you try the 3 closing tips that I gave you for how to wrap up that meeting. So don't feel like you have to completely like rehaul your entire meeting process. If that feels overwhelming, just grab 1 or 2 tips that you've heard here today and try those out for a few meetings. But the other thing that I will tell you is I think it's important to keep a record of where your inquiries are coming from and whether or not they got on a meeting with you. And then of those meetings, how many of them book. These metrics are really important because when you come to the end of this year, you're sitting down and you're thinking, okay, do I pay for the knot? Do I pay for wedding wire? Do I invest in this listing? There's no shortage of places that we can invest as in our marketing, right? But in order to make informed decisions about what is actually working in your business, we need the metrics, right? Like the analytics are completely unemotional. They don't care how you felt. They are just the numbers on the paper. And I think that is an important part of being a CEO, being a photo boss in your business, is keeping track of these things. This is automatically tracked inside of Honeybook. You're not going to have your metrics for if you did a meeting inside of Honeybook, but they have where your leads came from, whether your conversion rate based on how many leads you got. That's all inside of the like tables and graphs area inside of Honeybook, which is really nice. But one other thing I would have you do is just a little spreadsheet of, for the meetings you did have, what was the outcome and did you follow up? And this can be a great way to follow that as well. Because if you're not following up, you might really be missing out on people that someone else followed up a lot more vigilantly. And so they just went with that person because that person seemed like they had it together. And I think about that sometimes. I think about like, oh my gosh, how many weddings would I have done in my earlier career if I would have, sent a video right away or had a better follow-up sequence or, any of the number of things that we talked about here today. Okay. Let's see. Rob says, hi, time invested with a client between booking at event day definitely helps for great photography on the day. Positive win for you and the client. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Okay. I think that's all the questions that we have as it pertains to the actual sales process, the meetings, the consultations. If you're watching this in the replay, leave me your questions, comments down below. Don't forget to grab the guide. That is the PDF available down below. And if you're not inside of PHOTOBOSS, the Facebook group, please come join. We are at almost 9,000 members from around the world, and it's just the coolest group with some of the most helpful conversations that I've seen in the photography space. So whoop, shout out. If you're in PHOTOBOSS, leave me a little whoop whoop. And I hope to see you guys next week. We're going to continue on with our live stream series here. If you have a topic that you would like me to talk more on, shoot me a DM or leave it in the comment section here or say it inside of PHOTOBOSS and I will see it. And then we are gearing up for going back to pre-filmed content as well. So it's been a few weeks of this live content, which has been so fun. But I have some really fun videos that are being filmed and edited currently that I can't wait to share with you guys as we move into November and December and then a new year. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.